Benjamin says, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. That's from Viktor Frankl. Yeah, absolutely. Not long ago, we watched a video on YouTube that was a cosplayer. Do you guys know what cosplay is? It's the people who dress up like superheroes and their favorite characters from movies and comic books and all that kind of stuff. And then they go to conventions or costumes. You guys can get a sense of this is all the same woman. This is 10 years of her cosplaying. It's like it's superheroes, Thor and Frozen and Catwoman and Poison Ivy and the Joker and Harley Quinn and it just goes on and on and on, right? There's Black Swan and Black Widow and yeah, that girl from Beetlejuice, and there's Beetlejuice himself, and then Cruella DeVille and I can't even keep up with the video, right? So you get a sense of you get a sense, right? Okay, that's one woman's so-called hobby. Okay, now let's bring it back to Benjamin's comment here. All of these characters represent archetypal aspects or archetypes in our modern mythologies. And many of these characters, not all of them, but many of them represent archetypal truths. So they're archetypal heroes. Imagine if this individual took just a fraction of the time and energy that she spent on looking like these characters. Imagine if she spent half the time and energy that she spent making herself look like these heroes, and instead applied that energy and that focus to embodying the archetypal heroism embodied in these characters, in these mythical archetypes. When Benjamin says, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. This is what cosplay is. They know intuitively, they feel, they sense a deep connection with the archetype of the character, but they can't make that deep connection through themselves, within themselves. So they have no choice but to be duped by the rational mind, and the bait and switch takes place, and they become distracted with the superficial expression of the archetype. And what do? They mimic it. They mimic it on the surface, instead of seeking to embody it within. Like we said earlier, imagine if the world spent half the energy that they do on looking good and going to the gym and watching their diet and nutrition and everything else. Imagine if they spent half that energy being metaphysically good and optimizing themselves metaphysically. Cosplay is the absolute pinnacle expression of this, because you cannot deny the time and energy and effort and creative energy that was spent on this hobby, the artistry, the imagination, the creative energy that this woman expended upon superficially looking like these heroes and heroines instead of embodying what they represent. Another way to express this is idolatry. This is the essence of idolatry. When you idolize, you become obsessed with the surface of things instead of connecting with and embodying the deep universal truths that those superficial expressions embody, that the superficial expressions represent, that the signs and symbols and characters represent. The personification of God, for instance, and the gods and goddesses, the personification of that is there to assist us in identifying with and recognizing a mirror unto our true selves. But what happens? People become identified with the personalities, especially this was the big problem in Hinduism too, because they have, what, millions of gods, and everybody has their own favorite. It's the same thing that happened in Greece and in Rome, when you had this vast pantheon of gods, and it just ended up in idolatry. Or people had their favorites, and they played their favorites. But it was all just superficial stuff, just like today with superheroes and cosplay. In fact, the Greek theater was born out of the Dionysian festival, where people basically were dressed up like the gods and goddesses and did what, they drank wine, which they thought was a magical substance, a transmuted magical substance that altered their state of consciousness. It wasn't really wine. It was the precursor to wine. It's called must. That slightly fermented grape juice. But in that time, people had zero alcohol tolerance. So it was like 1%, 2%. But that was enough to get people drunk and have these big drunken orgies. And of course, it was in worship to Dionysus. This dress up, this cosplay, goes all the way back in antiquity because all religions degenerate into this at some point. Look, they even dress up little kids in Catholic schools to do the Passion Play, where pageantry replaces comprehension and the surface level ritual becomes a stand-in and replaces deep connection and comprehension that the ritual is meant to represent. So again, imagine if the individuals spending their lives on this hobby of cosplay took a fraction of the time and energy that they spent on it, meditating on their heroes and heroines instead, meditating on those archetypes, instead of just pretending to be them, trying to embody them and embody those truths. You can do that in meditation, and you can receive from the world of archetypes the information that you need in order to become an embodiment of that truth. That's what inform means, to inform, to take something from the world of archetypes and put it into form, put it into your body so that you can embody it. There's no ambiguity here in the language. There's nothing clever about the language here. It is exact and precise and objective. And the purpose of meditation is information. And why you are watching Attlas in formation. Because the mortal body here waving his hands about and desperately tripping over his words as he's attempting to use his monkey mind to communicate and reflect to you the information he's receiving from the world of archetypes, and he's limited and handicapped by his defects and vices that he's constantly having to wrestle with. But at least we've made a point of our life to attempt to embody those truths for your sake, as clumsily as we might do it sometimes, and as frenetically as we might do it sometimes, as we attempt to contain and meter out in a measured way, in a tempered way, the intensity of alux, of the Christ. But if we did not meditate on a daily basis and did not practice self-observation and self-remembering, and if we didn't daily go to that gymnasium, it's the first thing that we do every day to prepare ourselves for the day, then we would be a complete basket case. Way worse than however we might be tripping over our words and how frenetic and how chaotic at times when clearly we're being overwhelmed with an intensity and an energy behind the truth that we're sharing with you, and also the passion that we have for suffering humanity, and the passion that we have for what in business we call opportunity cost. In business, opportunity cost is not the cost of doing something, the cost of not doing something else that you add to the cost of what you're doing. So forget about the cost of time and energy that this woman put into her hobby, okay? Because there was a cost, a real energetic, material, financial, and time cost, an investment into doing all this. But what about the opportunity cost? You see, we have to add the opportunity cost to the cost of the distraction and the cost of the pleasure, because the distraction and the pleasure doesn't just come at the cost of the time and energy we put in it. It comes at the cost of what we didn't do with that time and energy that we could have done, but we didn't do. That's the opportunity cost that we have to put on top of all of our wasted time and energy on our frivolous hobbies and our frivolous pleasures, which are fleeting at best. Now, again, we're not saying there's anything wrong with being a cosplayer or having this hobby, because clearly it takes a lot of dedication and time and energy and skill and artistry and imagination to do all this. We're not taking anything away from this person and their hobby, but still, for us, just a fraction, 10% of the time and energy. And clearly you can tell she's a very nice person. She's a very, and this is what's so heartbreaking and why we get so passionate about this, because you can look in her eyes and you can see in her all of this passion, this energy, this creative drive to embody these universal truths, this heroism, and but also the villainy, right? Some of these are villains. You got to know both the light and the dark, so that there's shadow work here. There's all kinds of passion for knowing good and evil, for gnosis, but all that passion and energy is being funneled to superficial idolatry. And the results are astounding. They're mesmerizing. It's really easy to be impressed by this and go, wow, and be distracted by it and not see and not recognize the opportunity cost, the opportunity lost. 10 years of conscious development, of bringing your innermost being into the world, of embodying, of informing the world with the fundamental universal truths that these archetypal characters are attempting to express and represent, and taking and channeling all of that passion, all of that drive, all of that creative energy, and clearly a joie de vivre and a kindness and a motivation to share with others her creations. And the creations are herself. She is the canvas. So you see all of this, in all of this, there's this lamentable reality there. And as impressive as all this is, we're not impressed. We're sad. That's a very, very long tangent based on Benjamin's comment here. But it was apropos, and it was just serendipitous that we watched this video this week.